Christine is from the National Museum of Kenya. We have Ruth Nawakwi, all the way from Zambia. And those are the for this session, so they are ready. We're just waiting so that the rest come in so that we can begin. So Dennis, you have 7 minutes. ICT, please. We need some help here. ICT, we need some help here.
Entomologist aka and Sino-Africa Joint Research Center, SAJOREC, invites you to the second Joint International Scientific Conference from the 8th to the 12th June 2026 at the National Museums of Kenya, Nairobi. Under the theme, Harnessing Biodiversity and Cultural Heritage for Economic Transformation, the conference will bring together scientists, researchers, policymakers, innovators, and heritage experts to explore solutions for ecological resilience, climate-smart agriculture, heritage conservation, One Health, digital innovation, and sustainable livelihoods. Participants will engage in plenary sessions, technical presentation, exhibitions, networking opportunities, and heritage discussion to iconic sites including Olegesaiele, Karen Blixen Museum, and Nairobi National Museum. Join a global community of experts shaping the future through science, biodiversity, and cultural heritage. Follow us on our social media platforms for details and updates.
Tropical storms and high-velocity winds. A joint report by UNESCO and the International Panel on Climate Change emphasizes that these climate stressors pose an escalating threat to coastal cultural heritage. My study was based in Lamu Old Town, which, as I said, is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and is one of the oldest and best preserved soily settlement in East Africa. Geographically, Lamu Old Town is located some 350 kilometers north of Mombasa. And unlike other soily settlements which have been abandoned, Lamu has continuously been inhabited for over 700 years. And this historic town was inscribed on the UNESCO World Heritage List in the year 2001 under criteria 2, 4, and 6. My study was guided by the following objectives. The general objective being to assess the impacts of climate change on the built heritage of Lamu Old Town and to explore how coastal biodiversity supports heritage conservation strategies. The specific objectives that guided this study was one, to examine key climate-related threats affecting the built heritage of Lamu Old Town, and the second objective being to analyze the role of coastal biodiversity, that is mangroves, in protecting heritage landscapes. This research, sorry. It's okay. Yeah. This research adopted a mixed method approach, adopting both qualitative and quantitative research approaches. The qualitative aspect being primary data was obtained through interviews with local community members and also interviews with Lamu NMK official, that is the Lamu curator. And also observation was drawn through photo survey. Spatial analysis entailed use of historical image analysis to analyze the impact of climate change over time. Then secondary data set entailed desktop survey by reviewing IPCC reports, sea level data, and also the relevant literature, and also review of UNESCO reports, the Lamu Old Town Management Plan, and the NMK reports. Sea level flooding and coastal erosion is one of the main threats to the built heritage of Lamu Old Town. The photo you can see here is flooding of the seafront, and this old town has over the last decade experienced an inordinate spring tide, causing periodic flooding of the seafront street. And this coastal flooding takes place along the waterfront, and the water is adversely affecting the built heritage through capillary action and erosion. The destruction of mangroves, which acted as natural barriers against strong winds, tsunamis, and advancing waves, has exacerbated these climate-related risks. Changes in tidal movements is also another threat to this coastal heritage. And the photo you see there is a photo of Ras Kitau, our First World War British installation phase. And this historic building has significantly been impacted by shoreline erosion. And it is during this spring tide and storm surges that allows the waves to reach further, causing the erosive force on the coastal platform. And as you can see, this site has been eroded over time and is currently facing significant climate-related threats. Sorry. Chemical weathering in Lamu Fort is also another climate-related stressor. And this photo here is for Lamu Fault, which is experiencing chemical weathering, particularly salt crystallization, rising sea levels, and coastal flooding, which allows salt flooding water to penetrate the coral stone walls. As water evaporates, crystal forms inside the stone pores, and this causes wall flocking, cracking, and surface deterioration of the building fabric, as you can see. I also utilized historical image analysis from Google Earth. As you can see, the first photo is from 2003, and the other one is the current satellite imagery from Google Earth in the current one. And you can see there's significant reduction of mangrove surrounding Lamu Old Town, which used to act as the natural defense barriers against these strong tides, and this has largely affected the built heritage in this historic town. This here is a map, a projection of 100-year effect of climate-related risks, and these the climate-related risks are projected to exacerbate as we near 2050 and 2100, with far-reaching consequences for coastal heritage sites in North Africa, West Africa, and the coastal islands. Local communities in Lamu Old Town possess valuable indigenous knowledge and traditional building practices that have historically helped them adapt to the coastal environment and changing climatic conditions. Lime-based mortars and allow buildings to breathe, unlike modern cement. And these materials permit moisture to evaporate naturally, helping reduce dampness and salt-related deterioration. Strengthening heritage resilience in this old town requires combining traditional soil knowledge and community practices with modern climate adaptation conservation strategies. Key findings of these research is that climate change has significantly affected beauty heritage in Lamu Old Town, including wall flaking, structural decay, and chemical weathering. Mangrove loss has also reduced the natural cost of protection. This study came out with two key recommendations, one for policy, which is the implementation of climate-based heritage impact assessments as a mandatory prerequisite for any development or conservation activities near coastal monuments. And these assessments will employ predictive models and early warning system to anticipate climate impacts, thereby informing preventive measures and long-term planning. There's also the need for the establishment of a coastal heritage mangrove restoration program, which by recognizing mangroves as natural infrastructure for climate adaptation, the program would strengthen heritage resilience against coastal flooding, erosion, and sea level rise, while simultaneously support biodiversity conservation and community-based conservation ecosystem. I'm grateful to the National Museums of Kenya, the Association of Kenya Entomologists, and all the other funders of this conference. Thank you.
Please, let's clap for our change maker. They are called PEPCA, Pathways for Emerging Biodiversity Change Makers. And with that, I'll just ask us that at least for each student, please spare some 2 questions for them because we are mentoring them. So be patient. We have Betsy, Alice, please come in.
Hello, everybody. My name is Betsy Alice, and I'm a student at the University of Nairobi. My supervisors are Dr. Judith Odhiambo, Professor Lukoba, and Dr. Jolie Rajat. I'm from the Department of Biology, and I'm doing a Master of Science in Biological Science. And my training is on plant taxonomy and economic botany. So I invite you to listen to my presentation, which is very practical to our day-to-day lives. Okay, so the theme is harnessing biodiversity and cultural heritage for economic transformation. And my research is under the thematic area of indigenous and local knowledge. So just an introduction. In Kenya and also in Africa, more than 65% of households rely on leafy vegetables for their daily needs and nutritional needs. And I can attest that today, even when you go for lunch, you'll find some leafy vegetables as part of your meal today. So just listening to hear about this research. So my research seeks to check the difference or the comparison between the exotic species and the indigenous species. Exotic species are those that were naturalized into Africa or they were introduced through trade or colonialists and also through trade. And the indigenous ones are the ones that originated in Africa. So this study seeks to see what are their biochemical profiles and how do they compare? Do some of the indigenous species or some of the exotic species outperform the other groups? So there's that structural shift of most households preferring to use exotic species. Exotic species are like Brassica oleracea, which is known as Sukuma wiki. And for this study, I used Sukuma wiki matumbo. If you are Kenyan, you know Sukuma wiki matumbo as a benchmark. And also for the indigenous species, we had species like Cleon ginandra, which is saga. We had kunde, which is vigna, and also amaranth and a variety of these species. Okay, so what we are lacking now is a robust comparative biochemical profile detailing why we need to consume the local indigenous plants compared to the exotic species that were introduced into Africa. My research objectives were to determine the major secondary metabolites within the species and also the phenolic content, because phenols are part of the secondary metabolites, yeah, among others. And also to determine the antioxidant activity, and because this is an ongoing study, I'm yet to do that, but for today, I'll present to you what I found out based on my lab work on the secondary metabolite groups and the total phenolic content that these plants contain. Okay, so how did I do this research? I went to the field to pick some samples with the help of some farmers, and I did sampling of some species as outlined. I used the spider plant, the vine spinach, which is commonly known as nderema, the kunde, cowpeas, amaranth, and the black nightshade. So I was using this species against the control, which is the calicale, like I mentioned, it's Sukuma wiki matumbo brassica. And that's on the very end is a seedling of Sukuma wiki matumbo. So I was using the younger leaves. And the upper plant is Clium gynandra, which is saga, as you know, and on the far right is kunde. So I collected these plants with the help of the farmers. I washed them with distilled water and dried them. And then I ground them using an electric blender. After which I used cold maceration. I used methanol and dichloromethane as the solvent so that they could absorb the chemical compounds in these plants. And after which I used that machine, which is the rotary evaporator, to evaporate the solvents away so that I could remain with my extract. And then now I proceeded to concentrate and do the qualitative tests based on the Harbon methods. So I was using color changes to determine which metabolites are in which plant. So these are some of the color changes that I was able to observe from my work. So onto what I found out, that Clium gynandra was doubling some of these phytochemicals compared to the benchmark at the lower bottom, which is the Sukuma wiki matumbo, the exotic species. So at the top is Clium gynandra, which is saga, accompanied with the others, and it was having very significant volumes of these phytochemicals. Yeah, and so as you can see in this graph, yeah, Clium gynandra still contains more than double the phenolic content compared to the exotic kale. And also the Sechium edule is also an exotic species. So those two are my benchmarks against the indigenous ones. So from this study, I was able to conclude that these indigenous vegetable varieties possess significantly elevated quantities of secondary metabolites against the naturalized exotic benchmark. So I worked with farmers and I have some practical implications of this. So indigenous, and actually today and in the modern times or in most households, you find that the number of times you eat the traditional foods, it's a bit lower compared to the number of times you eat the exotic species like Sukuma wiki, cabbage, and all that. So you're encouraged to, as you can see, it's scientifically proven that the traditional vegetables have very many important phytochemicals that are relevant to our human body and immunity. So we need to consume them more. So we need that dietary diversification in our households, yeah. Yeah, so the way forward, we encourage planting of these species and also to provide funding and support to the local farmers so that they may be able to get high quality seeds for these species, traditional species, and they plant them, yeah. So yeah, so thank you so much. This was my presentation, and I'd like to acknowledge the National Museums of Kenya and all their partners. I'd also like to acknowledge my university, Department of Biology, and also to acknowledge the University of Florence, Italy, where I did my part of my work for the exotic species last semester. And I'd also like to appreciate this opportunity by PEPCA, which is funding my remaining work for this semester. Thank you. You can connect with me on LinkedIn at Betsy Alice. And also if you meet me outside, you can also ask me more questions with regards to the vegetables and anything in that line. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Betsy. We are from Lamu, and now we are on our plates, the indigenous vegetables. May I now take this time to bring in Mercy Modoni Karaoke from KU.
So, good morning, everyone. How are you? So my name is Mercy Muthoni Karaoke, and I'm a student from Kenyatta University, and I'll be presenting you my presentation titled Ties of Collaboration, Sustaining Heritage Governance at Manda Bay through the Public-Private Community Partnerships, which is the PPCP model. So I'm an MA student in archaeology, and so often when you think of archaeologists, we often think of them in excavating. But apart from excavating, we're also involved in the protecting, management, and conservation of the sites. And so when I look at the PPCP model, it's about collaborative governance model in terms of sharing risks, resources, and benefits that comes with managing heritage resources. And so sustainable heritage governance balances conservation, economy, and the society. So the community engagement part becomes a key fact. And so this emphasizes long-term resource protection, promoting inclusive decision-making. And so my case application is Manda Bay because I'm able to examine collaboration in conserving heritage, which is now the Manda Town Ruins. And so for my research gap, when we come to the context, I was first of all looking at how many places have we seen PPCP model in place. And it's mainly in other sectors like infrastructure, energy, and urban development. And so I was thinking about it in terms of the tourism sector and now combined with heritage governance. And also we see that there's increasing integration of heritage, tourism, and sustainability. And so we get to see the limited documentation of PPCP where it's functioning in the tourism sector. And most of it is because it's online. Like for the Manda Bay, you get to see that much of it is online, but there isn't literature on how the PPCP is working in the heritage governance sites. And when you see like sites like Manda, we get to see the works of Kusimba and the late Neville Chittick, but what about the conservation measures of the site? And so my research objectives, my general objective was to examine the role of PPCP in sustaining heritage governance at Manda Bay. And so for my specific objectives, I wanted to critically assess and identify the CSFs, the critical success factors for a PPCP model to work. And also to assess how collaborative initiatives between the public, the private, and the community influence conservation. And also which challenges exist in integrating a PPCP model in sustainable heritage governance. And so for my study area, it's in Manda Bay. Manda Bay is located at the northeastern tip of Manda Island. This is the Lamu archipelago. We get to see Pate Island, Manda Island, and the Lamu Old Town. And so these three islands, they've been in collaboration all the way since the founding of the Swahili civilization. And so for now, I want to see how are they conserving the Manda Town ruins located in Manda Bay. And this is not just a hotspot for the cultural ruins, but also natural heritage. We have a lot of coral reefs, which are home to a lot of biodiversity and fish. We have the small Manda Toto Island next to Manda Bay, which is also home to a lot of bird life. And this is also home to 43 plant species which are not found anywhere else but in Manda Island. And so what is being taken? And there's also one thing, with the coming of the LAPSSET, the water being dredged from Lamu Port led to the rising of the water. So buffaloes which used to cross up and about from Manda to Lamu are now constricted or restricted to Manda Bay. And so now it's upon Manda Bay Lodge to care and protect for this. And so what are they doing? And so for my methodology, my research design was a qualitative approach with a case study research design. My sampling was purposive, and my materials included semi-structured interview guides, FGDs, and field observations. And my methods were a literature review, field survey, interviews, FGDs, digital ethnography, and a thematic analysis. And so what did my study reveal? What were the findings? And so when it comes to the CSFs, what are the critical success factors for PPCP to work? And the first one is institutional coordination. We get to see that here now we have the Manda Bay Lodge, we have the Radical Lab, which is their partner, the Ocean Trust, the National Museums, and the community. And so in between, we get to see how they collaborate. For example, we get to see that in terms of community engagement, if it's about the protecting of the coral reef initiatives, we get to see that the community comes together, the Ocean Trust, the community, and the Manda Bay. And then the Radical Lab has actually brought about the benefit of capacity building in that they've been building a lot of projects. For example, we have the Manda Conservancy projects where they work together with the Ocean Trust and NMK to take care of the ruins. We also have the Manda Archaeological Project, which will be coming up for Radical Lab and NMK to work together. And so with this, you also get to see now how are the collaborations working. We get to see of coral reef restorations, the wildlife being protected, increased recognition of heritage values like the ruins in Manda. There's reforestation because we get to see that now without the crossing of other animals like the elephants, the acacia tortilis shrubs came in place. And so they have to restore, and also reduction of single-use plastic. In fact, going to Manda Bay, one of the rules is you can't go with plastic bottles or plastic papers. And they've also created employment opportunities for the locals. 1,000 people or 1,000 households are actually employed in Manda Bay. And everything from Manda Bay is made from local material, and also the services are locally from the people. And so we also get to see that in terms of the challenges, these challenges in terms of power and representation, the private sector gets to play a really big role in terms of power. And also in terms of representation, you get to see that in terms of gender, we get to see that women are not playing a big role as men are, because most of the initiatives involve the coral reefs where men are in fishing, the wildlife where men are actually the biggest part in taking care of the herd of buffaloes. And so there are also financial challenges. That's why they have to partner with more partners, and also benefit distribution. We don't get to see exactly how the community is fully benefiting as the private sector. And also environmental pressures. There is coral mining. For example, you can see the collapsed wall of Manda town ruins. It's because of the coral mining. They are made of coal or rubble. And also there's poaching and charcoal burning. And they also use slash and burn for agriculture. So integrating the community is about teaching the community on the ways to move forward. And so my interpretation of the PPCP in Manda Bay is that actors contribute different resources. And we get to see that Manda Bay has an upper hand because of its strong connection with external financials, and natural heritage gains more attention than cultural heritage. And despite all this, long-term success depends on inclusion, legitimacy, resources, and shared decision-making. And so in conclusion, I'd say that PPCP is a useful governance model, but it's uneven in practice. And we get to see it now in practice in Manda Bay. And it's because it's something they're integrating. In fact, one of the things they were saying is they're moving from public-private partnership to public-private community partnerships because of now putting the communities at the center. And so with that, that was my presentation. I'd like to acknowledge all the following organizations, especially NMK and PEBCA for all the training, and to my supervisors. Thank you.
Thank you for that very powerful presentation, still in Lamu and Manda Bay. So this time, Maristela Serengo from University of Eldoret. Maristela
Hello everyone, welcome to my presentation. I'm Injete Meristela, a microbiologist from University of Eldoret, focusing on the prevalence of and characterization of antimicrobial resistant bacteria and genes in surface waters of selected Kenya River basins. This work is being supervised by Dr. Becky Allo, Dr. Brenda Rasoa, Professor Maurice Okoth, and a mentor who is Dr. Sapela Kiprono. As we all know, water is a basic commodity of all living organisms. Approximately 71% of the entire world is covered by water, but only 2.5%, according to the studies, is proven to be fresh. This brings me in agreement with the reports from WHO and UN, which shows that most of our water bodies are impacted by pollution. With increasing population growth, agricultural development, and urbanization pressures on Kenyan economy, they have led to overuse and misuse of antibiotics. This is exacerbated by poor waste management practices, uncontrolled agricultural approaches, and insufficient monitoring of water quality issues, which allows for the persistence and dissemination of antimicrobial and their resistant genes in our water bodies. And as a result to this prevalence, the efficacy of antibiotics used to treat diseases is highly affected. In my study, the first objective that was conducted was to determine the consumption and application of antimicrobials as contaminants of emerging concerns in selected river basins. Those are three. We have the Tana, Athi, and Malewa. A semi-structured questionnaire was used with a random sampling formula to estimate the sampling size. To my findings, it was noted that majority of the people when sick do self-medication as compared to those people with hospital prescription. Self-medication is a significant public health concern whereby it leads to inappropriate use of antimicrobial. This include wrong use, this include incorrect selection of the antibiotic, overdose, and underdose. Also, disposable practices disposable practices of unused drugs included flushing through toilets or latrines, burying in the soils, and throwing in the bins. These practices are unsound as they represent a direct route or pathway through which antibiotics find their way into the water ecosystem. As you can see from this diagram, if we are flushing them into the toilets, tomorrow they are going to end in a wastewater treatment plant. But in Kenya, you can all agree with me that they are not focusing much on elimination of antibiotics in the water during treatment. So at the end of the day, they are going to release the water, which according to the appearance of the eye, as many people know that every clear water is clean water, but that is contrary to our study, because we are here to prove to you that not every clear water is clean water. This water, after being released from the water treatment plants, it will land in the water systems. Alternatively, in the landfills, we are going to have antibiotics buried in the soil. If not by rainfall that they will get into our water systems, they might also alter the soil. They might also alter the soil microbial communities. Again, in the findings, it was noted that antibiotics came second as the most ordered drugs from our pharmaceuticals and chemists. The predominancy of analgesics and antibiotics demonstrates that there is a widespread availability and utilization of these pharmaceuticals within the study population. The frequency of antibiotics used, as you can see, amoxicillin came first, cefuroxime second, and metronidazole came third. When I tried to compare these results, this is just what from the respondents of what they consume most, looking at the comparison with what Faith Chebi did in water. That is a report in 2024. He was able to trace some of these antibiotic residues in water. As we can see, we have metronidazole. From our survey, it came third. And from Faith Chebi's study, he was able to detect their presence in aquatic ecosystem. Do not look at the low concentration. Remember, the continuous exposure of the microbial environmental bacteria to this low concentration of antibiotic leads to it creates selective pressure, resulting to the persistence of resistant strains. In conclusion, self-medication is widely practiced among communities within the study area, suggesting a substantial and potential inappropriate antimicrobial use. Antibiotics consist a significant proportion, as you have seen. Then the disposable methods included flushing medicines into toilets, burying them in the soils, and disposal in the households are the predominant methods applied by our people. The observed pharmaceutical used and disposable practices are likely contributors to environmental contamination. This finding will provide a critical behavioral and environmental context, while I'll be proceeding with my other objectives that are targeting to investigate antimicrobial resistant bacteria and microbial resistant genes in the Tana, Athi, and Malewa river basins. To my recommendation, from this study, I recommend establishment of a national pharmaceutical take-back program. As you can see from the household levels, they're just throwing the antibiotics, they are unused, in the bins. Also, we need to strengthen the regulation of antibiotic sales, develop pharmaceutical waste management guidelines, and improve wastewater treatment plants to ensure we remove the antibiotics. Thank you to the funders. May God bless you.
Okay, thank you so much, Mary Stella. And this time we are going all the way to Ghana. Bukri Maxwell, please welcome. Can we get some help, please? So as Bukri prepares to present, is presenting on the insecticidal potential of the aqueous extract of Citrus sinensis peels and Chromolena odorata leaves. Against insect pest complex and garden eggs under the open field conditions.
Hello, good day. I'm Maxwell Abugri from the University of Ghana, an MPhil entomology candidate, and I'm here to present on the topic the insecticidal potential of some indigenous botanicals against the Leucinoides species and other insect pests of garden eggs. And I happen to have Dr. Thomas Baxton and Professor Ebenezer Odro Owusu as my supervisors. So my presentation will be in two folds: preliminary studies so far, and also follow-up studies, which is still ongoing. So garden eggs, Solanium etiopicum, is an important vegetable crop in Ghana and sub-Saharan Africa in general. And it contributes to nutrition, food security, and household income. But unfortunately, this crop is being faced with adverse insect pests, including the Leucinoides species, the lacebacks, aphids, whiteflies, just to mention but a few. And in recent times, farmers have actually largely depended on synthetic insecticide for the pest control, which has led to resistance development, environmental pollution, and human health risk. And therefore, in recent times, there has been a growing interest in botanical insecticide as a sustainable alternative with benefits of its biodegradability, its reduced toxicity, and its synergistic traits with integrated pest management. And these plant materials having to have their parts, such as their barks, leaves, roots, which are used in manufacturing these botanical insecticide. And therefore, these parts or these plant materials do have some bioactive compounds which helps in managing insect pests. So these are just a few plant materials that by far have proven to have insecticidal properties. So the justifications of my study: the major pests, such as the Leucinoides species, it can reduce yield loss to about more than even 50%. And also it reduces the market quality of the fruits. And also the overuse and misuse of these pesticides, leading to the insect resistance in pest population, and also negatively affecting beneficial insects, which causes environmental contamination and also its health risk due to the pesticide residue. And therefore, there is a limited field-based evidence of botanicals, of their effectiveness against the key pest, which is the Leucinoides species, and also their impact on beneficial insects. So this is the picture, or these are some few images of the key pest in focus. The Leucinoides species is actually a moth, but it has its destructive stage of the insect being the larvae, which finds itself in the roots, in the shoots and also the fruits of the garden eggs, which you could see the damage it actually causes in the shoot and also the fruits of the garden eggs. So the objective of my study is to manage the field insect pest of garden eggs cultivation through the utilization of Citrus sinensis and also Chromolyna odorata, that's the Siam weeds, as selected botanicals, with specific objectives being: one, identify and also assess the bioefficacy of the selected botanical extracts against major insect pests attacking garden eggs on the field, and two, to assess the effect of the treatment on some beneficial insects on the field, and three, to evaluate the effect of the selected botanical on the yield, crop yield, and also to assess the damage caused by the eggplant, fruit, and shoot borer, that's the Lucinoides species, after it has undertaken the various treatments. So one would ask why Chromolina odorata and also insect Citrus sinensis, because it has proven to control, to have insecticidal property, which can be used in controlling insect pests of cabbage and also okra in Ghana. So this study was conducted at the University of Ghana Experimental Farm, where the field was weeded and cleared, and a randomized, completely bulk design was used, where the garden egg cultivar, that's the Legon 1, was used as a test plant. Seeds were sown in seed trays, and appropriate farming practices was used, and the seedlings were transplanted after 7 weeks. And also the peels of the Citrus sinensis and also the leaves of the Chromolina were air dried in the lab for 2 weeks after were grinded into fine powder, and also 200 grams of the powdered botanical was mixed with water within plastic bowls, left in the dark for about 48 hours at room temperature. After the mixture was filtered with a masculine cloth, and also approximately 5 ml of soapy solution was added to the filtrate, and the standard insecticide that was used is the ivermectin benzoate and was applied at a rate of 3 milliliter per liter, while the control group received only water, and spraying was done weekly using a knapsack sprayer. So this is a picture of the field layout, and in achieving objective 1, insects on the tag plants. So in each subplot, we had 20 plants, and within the 20 plants, 6 were tagged, and data was collected weekly. So on each tag plant, the insects found were collected in sample containers and taken to the lab for identification, sorting, and counting. And also in objective 2, the fruits were harvested by hand picking at fully matured stage, where the weight was recorded using a weighing balance, and the yield was also calculated using the formula stated. And the damage assessment, so the number of fruits per plant, number of damaged fruit per plant, number of undamaged fruit per plant, and also the number of eggplant, fruit, and shoot borer that emerged after fruiting were recorded, and the infested fruit was calculated as a proportion of the gathered fruit according to a formula used by Rahman et al. In 2024, which has been stated here. And data was collected and formatted into an Excel spreadsheet and analyzed using a GenStat software. ANOVA was used, and also a statistical software was set at 0.05. So the results at the end of the fieldwork, a total of 13 arthropods, with 12 being insects and 1 being an arachnid, was found. So these are the population buildup of some of the major pests, having the Contuberta species, having the Xenocerus variegatus, having aphids, having whiteflies, having lacebacks, and also infixes. That's the main focus. That's the infestation of the eggplant, fruit, and shoot borer on the field. So after week 8, where fruit was actually had, it was seen that the Citrus sinensis treated crops recorded a higher number of species, which could it mean it was an attractant to these insects. So studies is actually ongoing, and also with the with the effect on the beneficial insect, that's the Camponotus species and also the Clomys species, there were no significant difference among the treatments. And also with the yield, you could see that the Chromolina treated crop recorded high yield, which was significantly different, but the fruit damage was, there were no significant difference statistically. So in conclusion, the fruit damage remained high across the treatment, suggesting that the botanical extracts provided limited protection against the fruit by the Lucinoides species, and also maybe the weekly application may have not maintained sufficient residual activity, and also the aqueous extraction may have not extracted enough active ingredients. And also it was observed that the Cromolina odorata showed agronomic potential, which helped in the growth. So the follow-up experiment is to perform some bioassay where the botanicals will be having direct contact with the larvae of the Leucinoides, and also there would be some isolation, also characterization of the bioactive compounds in the botanicals against the Leucinoides species. These are my reference, and sincere gratitude to my supervisors, Professor Ebenezer Odreusu and Dr. Thomas Baxen, and also to our program coordinator, Prof. Ken Okwai-Fenin, who happens to be a former student of Kenyatta University. Thank you so much. And also a sincere acknowledgements or gratitude to PEPCA for their sponsorship and also the sponsors of this event. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Abugri. I'm trying to pronounce it in Ghanaian way. So we've just seen that Abugri is using the nature-based solution that Professor Nyamasio was talking about, and that's quite good. But we also seen from the previous presenter that as individuals, we also have bad practices that are bringing about the resistance in the drugs that are on the market. So those are key points. Now, the next presenter is Jen Njagi from Kenyatta University. Jen, please.
So good afternoon. My name is Jen Njagi. I'll be presenting on adoption and perceived impact of organic-based soil practices on soil health and farm biodiversity in Kiambu County, Kenya. This work was under mentorship of Professor Mugwe, Professor Muna from Kenyatta University, and Dr. Esther Muindi from Pwani University. We note that the smallholder farming systems, they are increasingly faced by interconnected ecological and agricultural challenges, including decline in soil fertility, loss of biodiversity, as well as climate variability. Therefore, to manage such challenges, the adoption of organic-based soil practices is highly recommended. The reports have shown that practices such as intercropping, application of manure, as well as agroforestry have the potential to improve soil health, as well as provide habitat for beneficial organisms such as pollinators, as well as natural pest control, thereby enhancing ecosystem functioning. However, the adoption of these practices is uneven, and there is limited evidence of their perceived impact in terms of crop productivity, soil health, as well as biological benefits. Therefore, these gaps form the foundation of this study. To address them, the study sought to assess the socioeconomic and demographic factors which are influencing the adoption of manure application, crop rotation, intercropping, agroforestry, cover crop, mulching, as well as incorporation of crop residues. Additionally, the study assessed what are the perceived impact of these practices, particularly on the soil health indicators crop productivity, as well as functional biodiversity. Therefore, this study was carried out in Limuru Sub-County in Kiambu County, whereby a cross-sectional household survey consisting of 384 smallholder farmers was administered following a multi-stage sampling approach. The data was collected on adoption levels, socioeconomic and demographic factors, as well as the perceived impact, whereby the adoption was measured using binary, that is yes or no, but the adoption intensity was measured using the area under each practice, whereas the factors used the explanatory variables, and the perception was measured using the Likert scale. Therefore, the statistical analysis was conducted using descriptive statistics, 2-bit regression, as well as the factor analysis. The results on the adoption levels shows that the application of manure was highly adopted, followed by agroforestry and intercropping, whereas the incorporation of crop residue was least adopted. The high uptake of manure application could be attributed to availability of the farmyard manure in the area, and you know that the farmers tend to adopt a technology which is economically feasible and has immediate benefit. Overall, the adoption was more high, whereby the household key decision makers were male between the age of 41 to 60 years. Now, those practices, adoption intensity was mainly influenced by the on-farm income, as well as access to information through media such as TV, radio, social media through phone, and group membership. The significant influence of the on-farm income, we note that in as much as these resources are locally available, the availability of additional income could be used to cater for some cost associated with the labor, whereas social media and the group membership provided a platform to access agricultural information. You know that the perception were measured using the Likert scale. Therefore, use the factor analysis, whereby you are able to group this into two major categories. The first one was crop productivity and yield benefit, whereby the farmers perceived moisture retention, easier tillage, a reduction in soil erosion, accumulation of organic matter acidicated by darker soil, as well as increased pollinators, were more associated, linked to soil physical and biological benefit than the crop productivity and yield benefit. Where the increase in productivity, crop quality, yield stability, as well as soil fertility was more linked to crop productivity and yield benefit than the soil physical and biological benefit. This shows that adoption of organic-based soil practices has the potential to improve soil health, biodiversity, as well as crop productivity. Therefore, biodiversity conservation and agricultural productivity could be achieved together through sustainable soil and land management practices. Based on this study, we found that application of manure was highly adopted, and that adoption intensity was mainly influenced by additional or the on-farm income, access to information through social media, and farmer group membership, and that the farmers perceived benefit in terms of increased crop productivity, soil health, and functional biodiversity. Therefore, adoption of organic-based soil practices could promote biodiversity-friendly and climate-smart agriculture, and therefore we recommend the strengthening of access to agricultural information as well as caring of the organic-based soil practices. I wish to acknowledge the National Museums of Kenya and all the sponsors. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jen. We have come all the way from Lamu, Manda, Kiambu. We went to Ghana and Kiambu, and now we want to go to West Pokot. And the presenter is Nwakaba Leonidas from Uganda, but from the University of Eldoret. And he'll be presenting on community-based climate change adaptation strategies among agro-pastoral households in West Pokot. Yeah, sorry about that. And even as they do that, we are remaining with two students after he presents. Then we will not be standing in between you and the very precious lunch. Hopefully we will get the saga and some of the very good vegetables that they were talking about here. And even as they do that, please, like we said, we are mentoring these students. Most of them are presenting just the iceberg of their work, probably just the first objective, because they only had 2 months to be able to collect this data, and this will be still ongoing, and we are really looking forward to see the whole output from them. So we have two students, Christine Maroma from NMK and Ruth Nawakwi from University of Zambia. So keep holding there. We also started late, but we are doing the best that we can.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Leonidas Nwagaba is my name. I'm presenting to you a research conducted in areas of Kipkomo, West Pokot County. Evaluation of climate-based adaptation strategies among agro-pastoral households in Kipkomo sub-county, Kenya. The place is nice, was nice, no insecurities. As I discuss the findings of the place, I would like to invite you to take home one thing. If you are above 10, rather 50 years, 45, let's say, when you used to walk by the road you are going to school, you would look at your face in the water by the road, right? And that summarizes climate change. And now you no longer see that. Climate change traces back in the year 1880s. We speak of Industrial Revolution, and it is loud speaking when carbon dioxide becomes immense in the atmosphere from industrialization at the global stage. And we see Kipkomo is not isolated either. It is suffering from the impacts of climate change. We see the maize are getting submerged. If you look at the last photo, it is taken in Kipkomo itself by Leo Wagaba. Here we see animals dying, the impacts of climate change. When you look at that river, you can tell how waters look like. The research is intending to look at how all these practices are effective to the community I am engaging. And it is, despite introduction of several community-based adaptation strategies, like consumption of indigenous herbs, harvesting water, pasture management, climate change, farming, and livelihood diversification in the area, their effectiveness in improving household resilience and adaptive capacity has not been clearly established. The general objective is evaluation of climate-based adaptation strategies among agropastoralist households in Kipkomo sub-county of West Pokot. And specific objectives are to examine community climate-based strategies used by agropastoralist communities in the study area. Secondly is to evaluate household incomes in relation to selected climate change adaptation strategies in the study area. And lastly is to determine the impediments to implementation of the identified community-based strategies and the materials and methods. Starting with the study area, you can see the two different, that map with two different colors. I'm not good at telling what color those are. Men can attest to that. One is Batai, one is Chepareria. Those are two words constituting Kipkomo. I used Kobo Collect using Cochrane's formula. 259 sample was arrived at. 30 elders were interviewed, 2 administrators, one of them was a chief, and 4 FDGs were involved. Semi-structured questionnaires having 11 sections. Data was collected from locations of Seneto, Kolelach, Prioko, and this is from Chepareria, which is the upper part of Kipkomo. Then Malpus and Chemogen, it is the lower part of Batai, and Excel and the SSP tools were used to analyze the data. When we go back to a little, Chepareria is on a higher altitude, above 2,000 meters sea level. Results. The distinctive gap of 22% speaks about the patriarchal influence as far as climate change strategies implementation in the area is concerned. Why did I look at the gender of the respondents? Men have say when it comes to decision making. Age of the respondent, much of it, we can see it is at 44%, and it lies between 30 and 40 years. This is an active age where people would take action seriously, and this would speak to whether there is work done towards climate change, resilience, or not. And when we look at the age between above 50, these guys rely more on traditional knowledge. Thus, adopting the new technology becomes a challenge, but still they are taking the smallest percentage. Household size matters a lot. When a new technology is implemented and there are two people in the household, a father and a mother, it becomes chaotic. But looking at between 5 and 10, mostly there were 7, 8 members in the household. This speaks to available labor, thus enhancing the technologies brought to the area, thus speaking to resilience of climate change. Education of respondents also was looked at, very important, because education also speaks to adaptation, capability, and capacity. Primary and secondary took the largest share, while in the field, a few individuals had accessed higher and tertiary education, thus taking the lowest. And if you happen to find time, visit Kipkomo, you will see a few individuals at 9.03. They are doing miracles in Kipkomo. Thus, the 40% is still stagnant somewhere. He has lived in by the respondents. The 21 to 40, they are having a bigger percentage. And they have experience. They speak with what have we seen before and what have we seen with World Vision. World Vision is one of the organizations that is working in Kipkomo. They have good narratives to say about climate change from day one to where they are right now. Main livelihoods in the area, it is crop diversification that speaks from low cost. Why? They use very little money to improve their livelihoods, and also climate shocks in the area, drought, pests, and all that, and floods is less spoken about. Ranking of climate shocks, drought took it all. Going back to the photos I showed you, the effective climate change mitigation, crop diversification took the lion's share. Conclusion. Incremental adaptation rather than transformation adaptation was observed and recorded. Crop farming is the dominant livelihood source among households in the area. The pattern of climate shocks in Kipkomo shows that households face more than just weather-related hazards. Recommendation, expansion of adult education and functional literacy program on climate change matters in ASELs, strengthening agriculture extension services, and increase field-based demo plots, support integrated adaptation packages like apiary and mushroom farming, and all this need to have practical policy to address Kipkomo vulnerability to climate change impacts. Thank you very much to the sponsors of this program, this event, and for the listeners. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Nwakaba. And this time, we now invite Christine Maroma, who is taking us to Ondiri wetlands. Christine, welcome. Christine is is working on seasonal and spatial variations of the heavy metal levels. You seem to be having hands that will cure this one, if you are, please. Yeah. Yes, so please, even as Grace comes, spare at least 1 or 2 questions for each of the students. We'll be calling them all here, and I'll be pointing at students. At least 1 or 2 questions, we go to the next, so that at least in the next 20 minutes, we should be out and taking our good lunch. Yeah, sorry about that. Probably as they do that, I could just call the first student. The first student who presented, that was Dennis. Dennis, please come over, so that we save on time and multitask. So please, Dennis was presenting on climate change, cost of biodiversity, and heritage resilience in Lamu Old Town, Kenya. Any question for Dennis, please? Thank you, thank you. Your voice is good.
Thank you very much for that. 2 great questions. I think I will start with the second one on the aspect of significant loss of mangrove in the Lamu Archipelago. As you can see, like, there are major infrastructure projects, such as the Lamu Port, South Sudan, Ethiopia Transport Corridor project. And from what I found out from the spatial analysis from the photo I shared of the spatial analysis, you can actually see there's been large mangrove loss of large mangrove because of land use changes, and these natural barriers actually acted as natural defense mechanisms against shoreline erosion and these strong tidal waves. And when I was in the field, what I saw was the construction of the seawalls near the seafront. And these permanent seawalls cannot act the same as these natural defense mechanisms. So that's where the concerns comes in. And in terms of quantifying, you can actually tell from spatial imagery, but in terms of numbers, I think I still have to go back to the field and then get back to you. On chemical weathering, the old town has been traditionally constructed from lime mortar and coral stone architecture. And with these changes in modern use of cement and industrial lime and these other, we need to go back to the traditional way of Swahili architecture, and that I think would also help, because I mean these people have managed to conserve their heritage for the longest time. I think we can still manage this by going back to the Swahili traditional Swahili architecture by use of the locally available coral stone and lime mortar. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Any other questions, please? You have all seen Dennis, so you'll be able to ask. So may I invite Maroma? All the best.
Thank you for the opportunity. I'm Christine Maroma. I come from the NMK, and I'll be presenting to you seasonal and spatial variations of levels of heavy metals in water and sediments from Ondiri wetlands and its outflows. My supervisors are two, Dr. Paul Njogu of the Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Dr. Jane Mburu of the Murang'a University of Technology. Someone might want to know why I was attracted to Ondiri. This is simply because it's the only documented quacking bogie in Kenya and the second largest, deepest wetland in Africa, without forgetting that this is the main source of the water into the Nairobi River that traverses in the capital city of Kenya. Introduction: wetlands are the areas that are the areas of land that are saturated or flooded with water seasonally or permanently, and they play a crucial role in the society as well as sustainability of both surface and groundwater. At the same time, they act as an important subsystem, ecosystem, which plays a major role in abiotic and biotic factors. And also, we find that the increase of agricultural activities, urbanization and industrialization, which are coupled to with poorly managed landfills, they normally contaminate the wetlands, whereby we find that they normally release contaminants which are untreated in terms of industrial effluent, vehicle emission, and also without forgetting the agrochemicals that comes from the agriculture around the area, which combine the effort to play a major role in building up the contaminants, which include heavy metals, and they're directed into the wetlands, which are going to affect what we call the biodiversity of the wetlands. A statement of the problem: wetlands sometimes are disregarded as the wastelands. At the same time, they are disregarded as the breeding site of the mosquitoes, and therefore they become the source of diseases such as malaria, and therefore people are preferring to drain them and transform them into the anthropological activities, which I believed to be more beneficial and satisfying. And these activities, they end up into the wetland, which are going to affect the biodiversity in the wetlands. Currently, Ondiri wetland faces several challenges due to the human activities, which include agricultural and real estate encroachment. When I'm talking about agricultural, when you go to the area, you find like there's so many farming around the area. At the same time, we have the greenhouses, and all this farming around the area, they're using agrochemicals, which eventually are directed into the wetland, and they end up affecting the biodiversity in the wetland. At the same time, the real estates that are upcoming, most of them, they're not connected into the sewer line, and therefore they normally dispose their wastes into the wetland. At the same time, due to population increase in the area, we find like we have waste disposal into the wetland. At the same time, we can't forget that Ondiri, naturally, it has a slope that is making it to experience high soil erosion. At the same time, it's going to increase the sedimentation of soil into the wetland. Without forgetting that there is an invasive species, e.g., the eucalyptus. At the same time, this wetland is lacking what we call legal protection. My main objective is to assess seasonal and spatial variations of contaminants of heavy metals in Ondiri and its outflows. At the same time, the association of land use, land cover changes between 1990 and 2020. Main objective is to determine the levels of lead, copper, cadmium, and zinc in the sediments and water samples from Ondiri and its outflows. Number 2, to determine the physiochemical parameters in water from Ondiri during wet and dry season, and to assess the land use, land cover changes between 1990 and 2020 using Landsat imageries. This is the map of Kiambu County, and the arrow shows where Ondiri wetland is. And Ondiri wetland is 20 kilometers west of the Nairobi city, which is located in Kiambu County, Kikuyu sub-county and Kikuyu ward, 20 meters west of the Kikuyu town. This is the study area. I have 3 sampling points, or three sampling sites, whereby I've named them upstream, midstream, and downstream. Ondiri wetland, as you can see, is my upstream sampling site. And this is my midstream. This is my midstream sampling point, and the downstream, and all gives me 6 sampling points. And Ondiri itself has 6 sampling points within the wetland, and the other 2 downstream. The study, my study design, I adopted research design, whereby sampling sites were selected randomly and to identify and ensure anthropological activities around the wetland. And also, I adopted what we call replicate sampling, whereby 2 samples of both water and sediments were collected in the same sampling points, and they were all subjected into the same handling during transportation into the lab where analysis was to be done. The locations were recorded using the GPS, and the samples were all collected from all those sampling points. And I collected water and sediments, and the water were collected into plastic bottles, and also the sediments were collected into the zippable plastic bags, and they were all stored into a cooler box during transportation into the lab where analysis was to be done. Atomical absorption spectrophotometer machine was used to analyze both the sediments and the water for my 4 metals, and the results. I'm displaying my results in a table, at the same time in bar graphs. As you can see, I have cadmium in the first column, and you can see the dashes, which means they were below detectable limits, and the other metals, they had some traces. And this graph shows the metal variation in water, and as you can see to my far right, there is nothing. That means those are the sampling sites into the downstream. When I'm coming to the sediments, you can see like everywhere we have the bars, which means there were traces apart from the cadmium. So discussion in all the sediments and the water, I discovered that there were higher levels of heavy metals in sediments compared to water. At the same time, lead was higher in sediments compared to all other cadmium. At the same time, I discovered that zinc and copper were below the WHO recommended levels, and therefore I can be able to say maybe they were higher on the upper stream, simply because all of us, we know that the wetland sediments, they become the sink of the metals. That is why the other side, or the downstream, we didn't get some of the traces. But I'm here to let you know that all this is just one season. We are yet to see what the dry season will give us. And therefore, allow me to say that at the moment, this water is excellent, has excellent quality regarding heavy metals. And at the same time, the sources might be due to the agriculture, vehicular emission, and the urban service runoff. And therefore, I am recommending that we need to establish riparian buffers and to regular soil sediment testing, and also to control urban and agricultural runoff. At the same time, to adopt the Ondiri wetland management plan that is in place, so that we are able to restrict what is being done in Ondiri. Otherwise, I am so grateful for all these groups, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Maroma. We are now from Ondiri and we want to go the way to Zambia. So Nawakwi, welcome. She's going to talk about youth, and so Nawakwi is going to talk about the youth-led climate adaptation and biodiversity conservation, and we are looking forward to see that. So Nawakwi, please, welcome. So next time, Kenyans, when we go out, we have seen how they do it. Thank
you. Thank you so much. A lovely good afternoon to you all. I have been introduced as Ruth Nawakwi from the University of Zambia. I'm a master's degree student from the School of Education. And my supervisor is Professor Gift Masaiti, and my mentor is Dr. Kaiko Movita. Then my topic is youth-led climate adaptation and biodiversity conservation through inclusive agroforestry in Lusaka Province, Zambia. So with me, that is our introduction and background. So what the map is showing Lusaka, which is our capital city. And one thing that I should appreciate before I even continue with my presentation is the fact that Nairobi has been maintained with trees. I was seeing the greens everywhere. The parts that I visited, I saw some trees compared to our city in Lusaka, which has been left bare without trees. Most of the trees have been cut in Lusaka, so there is a high rate of deforestation in my city. So the map shows Lusaka as not just a physical city, but as a living and shore ecological system where climate adaptation is achieved through nature-based solutions, and also biodiversity conservation is integrated into the urban planning rather than isolated in protected areas. So Lusaka city is a very big city with more than 2 million people, and it is always accommodating different people from the parts of the country and parts of the world. But then we are lacking on ways how to maintain the city and ensuring that we promote afforestation within the city. So we have inclusive agroforestry connects people, schools, communities, youth groups, and through agroforestry practices, our research or my research aims at ensuring that we maintain the city and keeping it evergreen. The background of my study is focused on looking at youth-led climate adaptation solutions. So the climate change has been talked about throughout many presentations, and it is a major global threat to agriculture and food security, not only in Lusaka, but it is a major threat at our global stage. So in African countries, it causes droughts, floods, rise in temperatures, and land degradation. Then we also have smallholder farmers are the most affected due to limited resources. This also applies to the young farmers, the youth, who also lack a lot of support and are usually affected by climate change, the diverse effects of climate change. So therefore, there is need to increase climate education and agroforestry, which are key to adaptation strategies. Then we have youth participation is increasingly important in climate action, as well as inclusive agroforestry supports biodiversity conservation and resilience. Under inclusive agroforestry, this is where we consider everyone, persons with disabilities, the youth with disabilities, the farmers with disabilities in our communities, the young and the old, as well as women and the men, without leaving anyone behind. So we have, just like any other country, Zambia also relies on rain-fed agriculture, and also most of our farmers use chemical fertilizers compared to organic farming. We have less numbers of organic farmers. So Lusaka faces deforestation, land degradation, and climate shocks, just like I mentioned in the first place. So my pictures there are showing the floods in Lusaka district during the rain season, when it is, when we experience a lot of rains. Most of the parts and areas become flooded. Hence, agriculture or farming becomes almost impossible in the district. Problem statement. So we have climate change and biodiversity loss threaten sustainable development in Zambia, as well as in Lusaka province. So agriculture productivity is declining due to droughts and land degradation. In 2023, we faced the highest drought period in Zambia, and there was less production. Okay, so there is also barriers that include less funding, lack of knowledge, and less access to land for the youth, as well as less policy support to include persons with disabilities or the farmer with disabilities or the young farmers. Then there is also limited research that exists on youth-led inclusive agroforestry practices within Lusaka district, and also there is a gap in climate adaptation strategies that engage or promote youth-led solutions. So the main objectives, that was me visiting some of the farms within Lusaka. So it was to examine how youth-led inclusive agroforestry initiatives contribute to climate change, adaptation, and biodiversity conservation in Lusaka province, Zambia. Specific objectives to identify climate change adaptation strategies used in youth-led agroforestry initiatives and also to assess the role of agroforestry in enhancing biodiversity and resilience. The third one is to evaluate the inclusion of youth, women, and persons with disabilities in climate adaptation initiatives. So there, that is the significance of the study, and that was me interacting with the young farmers, the female farmers within Lusaka district, and they were holding our vegetable, which is usually eaten by everyone in Lusaka, that is rape, and also tomato. So these provide to provide evidence-based recommendations for policymakers and also support Ministry of Education and Agriculture in program development. So mainly my study is not really focused on scientific means, but on measures that can provide information for policy development to Ministry of Agriculture and Ministry of Education, as well as strengthen youth and NGO climate adaptation initiatives, like the other presenter talked about the value of PP, the public-private partnerships. Then we have promote inclusive participation in climate adaptation and environmental protection. So these actions would contribute to sustainable development goals, that is SDG 2 zero hunger, SDG 4 quality education, SDG 5 gender equality, and SDG 13 climate action. The last one is SDG 15 life on land. Okay, so then the method that I used to get some data that I partly did, I used the research, my research is a qualitative study, and I used for data collection, I used semi-structured interviews, focus group discussions, and also documentary analysis. My target groups were the youth, women, persons with disabilities, and my sample size is 30 participants. Okay, some of the findings. One of the school programs or school projects that I visited was a garden maintained by a youth group, and it was found that they failed to maintain their garden due to lack of water supply. So the youth group were trying to promote agriculture production as young farmers, but they could not continue with their project because they lacked water supply and failure to maintain their gardens. So climate-related shocks have contributed to food insecurity and livelihood challenges. And small-scale farmers remain highly vulnerable due to dependence on rain-fed agriculture. So that is a photo of a garden managed by young farmers, and they're failing to maintain the garden due to lack of resources, water supply, and maintenance. Here is a photo of a young farmer who uses solar systems at a farm to pump water and maintain his gardens, and also uses the solar system to run his greenhouse farms or plants at his farm. So here we have agroforestry is emerging as an important climate adaptation strategy. And this young farmer plants different trees and plants different vegetables, and also produces different foods that support the community, and community members go there to buy and meet their needs. So the other photo, that was me there interacting with the students. and trying to find out how they get involved in climate adaptation initiatives and the knowledge on agroforestry. So communities possesses valuable traditional knowledge on environmental management, and with the young people, it was also important to get their ideas and also in trying to engage them on the knowledge that the indigenous knowledge on adaptation that they can use to practice during their farming and also agricultural production, or during their programs in universities as well as in communities. And then on there, I visited a farm for young women who are also growing vegetables and selling to the community, as well as they are using organic farming methods and irrigation farming methods. So the youth and women participate. There is limited access to climate information. Then there is also increased climate education is needed to promote information decision making. Then there is also need to work on different youth policies that will be used to promote inclusive practices in climate adaptation initiatives. Then that is me with young farmers. We were looking at the different seedlings that are being grown by different young farmers, and how we can promote inclusive agroforestry to improve food security and sustainable livelihoods. So you catch them when they are young. Okay, my key message: youth-led inclusive agroforestry presents a promising pathway for climate adaptation, biodiversity conservation, and community resilience in Lusaka district, but greater investment in inclusion, education, policy support, and capacity building is required. Okay, thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Nawakwi, all the way from Zambia. And I think the key message that is coming up here is that youth are limited in being involved in agroecology and many other farming practices. And I think the policymakers who are here, you've heard that. I presented a paper yesterday on the same, and one of the gaps was that the youth are not involved in policy making. When they do everything, but when it comes now to the policy table, they are told you don't have enough experience. They are put aside, and they ask guys 50 plus or 40 plus. And when we are doing that, we leave them out. So thank you so much. Please, all the presenters, come here. Please, I know you are youth, so you can be able to take half a minute. All the presenters who presented right now, please. As they come, let me just, we have Betty Alice. Anyone who has a question for Betty Alice? Betty Alice was presenting on phytochemical diversity and antioxidant. This is where we had the edible plants, the saga, tenderema. Okay, I'm calling it using my mother tongue, but they also have the other names. So any questions for Betty? Any question for Betty? Thank you so much, please. I know you have a very good voice, so please go on.
Has something to do with, there's something to do with the indigenous knowledge, but also something around economic transformation. The question is, you seem because of the secondary metabolites that you're talking about, which are extremely important, you seem, in fact, directly to
Go ahead. Okay, thank you so much for the question. So my presentation is just scouting for indigenous vegetables as a complementary source of nutrients and additional, not a replacement. And so in addition to the exotic species, we should recognize the value of our indigenous and local vegetables, that they also matter. So it's complementary to the whole thing. Yeah. Did I answer you? Yeah.
Thank you so much. But you can meet. You will be able to interact. So the next presenter was Tides of Collaborations, the PPCP, and that is Mercy Modoni. Karaoke, Mercy? Anyone? The question? Any question for Mercy? Manda Island. It was a very interesting one. Oh, thank you so much.
First of all, I want to congratulate all the presenters from different universities, and this is very nice to have seen them do this work. I had asked a question for the first presenter, and then another question to the second presenter. But let me start with the second presenter. You showed that project has had an impact on around Manda and Lamu. So I would like to, and we saw your pictures. Especially when the buffaloes get in huge concentration without control. And just for the other question was, there's a lot of use of center. And do you think this will be one of the threats?
Sake of time, allow the second presenter to give the answer, and then we are intermingling, and we have a very able repertoire here who will take that information, but at least you know Betsy, and you'll be able to do that. So let's.
So thank you. So thank you very much for the question. Actually, it had been raised about the human-animal conflict, and I actually got to ask more about it. And I realized that Manda Bay actually has a buffer zone. Because of now the coming of the buffaloes, they had to create a buffer zone also. And also now the Manda Conservancy, part of the Manda project under Radical Lab, they also now bought land next to Manda Bay Lodge, so that they can also be able now to extend the buffer zone to connect with the coral reefs. So I don't know if you can get how now the buffer zone also now creates like it helps to control the human-animal interaction. I hope I answered the question. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mercy. And the next presenter was presenting on characterization and microbial resistant bacteria genes in surface waters of Tana, Athi, and Malewa River basins. This was Maristela Serengo. A question for her.
This is the very bad practice that each one of us are doing. Please, a question for her. A question for her. Thank you. There is a question there. If your voice is like mine, you can start and then you will meet the. Thank you. Thank you. So.
Okay, thank you for your question. Among the three which has more microbial communities compared to the rest, the project is still undergoing and I'm yet to do the total count. But the selection of the basins were based on the informal settlements, agricultural activities around the basins. So that is yet to be confirmed. Okay, thank you for that question. Just like I've responded, I'm having 4 objectives. And my first objective was to understand the consumption rates of this antibiotic, what I did. My next objective, it will be answering the first question that I was asked about the total viable counts of the bacteria and the spatiotemporal variations on the rivers. And the next one is whatever you are asking about, the identification of bacteria before I go further into the genomics of identification of the resistant genes. So just follow up. Just follow up, not be
Yeah, thank you, thank you. Thank you so much. As you can see, please, when we are winding up this, we will also invite you so that you can be able to follow each person. And the next person is Maxwell Abukri. This one was using the citrus peels against insect pests. Please, a question for Maxwell. Okay, thank you.
Good presentation, Maxwell. I have a question. What could have contributed to the effectiveness of your botanical insecticide? And then the other question is, what would you advise us or the community on your formulations or your dosages?
Thank you so much. And now the next student who presented was Jen Njagi, Adoption and Perceived Impacts of Selected Nature-Based Practices on Soil Health and on Farm Biodiversity in Kiambu County. A question for her, please. A question for her. Most of us come from Kiambu. Okay, thank you. I can see someone saying they'll ask outside. We have a question for Nwagaba.
Thank you so much. I understand that the measurable outcomes or experimental results, they are very vital. But remember that before you set up an experiment or go out to do those results, you need to know what farmers perceive or what their opinions. Because a farmer cannot adopt something which is not beneficial to that farmer. Therefore, we start by what do farmers perceive about this. Then from that, we can now go ahead and test this from the laboratory or even set the experiment. That's why perceptions are very key to understand the opinion of the farmer. Thank you.
So thank you so much, members. For Christine Maroma, please put up your hand. That was the Ontiri, the water. We have Nwakaba. Nwakaba was doing something on climate change in West Pokot. Put up your hand, please, so that we can see you. Thank you. Then we have, of course, our sister from Zambia, Nawakwi. As we have our lunch, I've been given this by the very, I can't go beyond that. And even as I do that, I'm asking all the PEPCA students to remain behind, the 15 students. Harriet Committee, please remain behind as we release the team to go and have their lunch. I'm told we have youngsters in the room. You know, us old stars, we can please do whatever. So please, let's release everybody else. You go for lunch. The PEPCA, please remain behind, and the secretariat, conference secretariat, please. So thank you so much.
Partnership with the Association of Kenyan Entomologists, aka, and Sino-Africa Joint Research Center, SAGIREC, invite you to the second Joint International Scientific Conference from the 8th to the 12th June 2026 at the National Museums of Kenya, Nairobi. Under the theme, Harnessing Biodiversity and Cultural Heritage for Economic Transformation, the conference will bring together scientists, researchers, policymakers, innovators, and heritage experts to explore solutions for ecological resilience, climate-smart agriculture, heritage conservation, One Health, digital innovation, and sustainable livelihoods. Participants will engage in plenary sessions, technical presentation, exhibitions, networking opportunities, and heritage discussion to iconic sites including Ole Gesaile, Karen Blixen Museum, and Nairobi National Museum. Join a global community of experts shaping the future through science, biodiversity, and cultural heritage. Follow us on our social media platforms for details and updates.